From stutterer to international TEDx speaker, Karim Boktor is living proof that your past doesn't define your potential. Today, he works with elite founders, CEOs, and athletes to dismantle the hidden mental blocks that success alone can't fix. His methods go beyond mindset. He rewires the mind at a subconscious level for deep, lasting transformation. With speed and precision, Karim helps high performers unlock their full potential and lead from their highest identity and fulfillment. Karim, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, mate.
Mate, we obviously have only been recently connected, but I feel like we've connected on a whole other level, and it's been really awesome. Just a quick background for people listening. I flew to Sydney to a AI conference. You were there. We had dinner, and I feel like we just hit it off, and it's been nice to connect with people kind of in your realm, because I feel like we have a lot of similarities and a lot of crossovers that we can kind of go through today. But yeah, it's nice to always have a chat with people like-minded. But this isn't about me. This is about you. So I guess what I'd like to get an understanding is, who is Karim Boktor in your own words?
Today, I'm a mind performance coach. It wasn't always like this. It's sort of really just evolved as who I was today, as who I am today. I grew up with parents who escaped persecution from Egypt. Came here when I was 2, bullied, with not really much money. We were in a housing commission at the time. The people who were meant to transfer Dad his life savings didn't. So my parents found themselves in a very tough situation. I couldn't speak. I probably had every label under the sun, ADHD, dyslexia. And I thought I was stupid, and so did the teachers. I believed that. But really, I had a stutter, and my brain was just different from everyone else's. And I just accepted that that's who I was. And that's the story that I tell and of change to people.
And that's, I guess now what you could see how from a deeper level of what you went through as a 2-year-old potentially could have been a massive part of that, right? And obviously, like in today's world, what I like about, say, the internet and using it as a positive is that we can actually delve deeper as parents. You're a father now yourself, and I'm a father, and the things that our parents didn't have access to, I suppose, is a lot easier now to potentially help someone like you, right? But what I'd like to know is, like, coming from where you came from, now where you are, like, how did you end up coaching high performers? On that kind of mindset and pattern decoding.
I think innately within me, I was always driven. I always felt that I was destined for more. Like, I always said to myself, there's got to be more to this, right? Like, I just know that there's got to be more. And I know that a lot of people, like, listening now think the same, right? That's why they're always going to personal development stuff. They're going to Tony Robbins events, all that type of thing. And so I found I was really terrible at school, right? But I knew that I wanted to help people. So then I became a remedial therapist. So deep tissue therapist. I was in a clinic. I opened up my own business at the age of 21 or 23, something like that. So I was very entrepreneurial at the start. Didn't want to do that for the rest of my life. So then jumped into pharmaceutical sales. The jump between that and that is like unheard of. Like, you need a degree, you need a medical background. I didn't have any of that. I just interviewed for 3 years, right? To be told no over and over until, to my surprise, Australia's pharmaceutical company at the time, largest pharmaceutical company at the time, said yes. And then I killed it. I did really well. I was there for 4 years. And then my next progression was then mentoring and coaching surgeons while they're in surgery. So then I was in surgery, all scrubbed up with the surgeons, mentoring them. And the same thing, right? The surgeons are like, how did you get here? Do you have a medical degree, medical background? I'm like, dude, I'm a massage therapist. Right? So I've always been the type of person to never take no for an answer. It's like, how do I do it? It's like, someone tells me, no, you can't. I'll be like, okay, well, how do I do it? Worked with California, one of California's US biggest medical devices company. They flew me up to California for training for 2 weeks. That was amazing as well, but highly stressful. My wife was 4 years later, my wife was pregnant, and I'm like, hey, I don't want to keep doing this. I want more money, more time with my wife and my child. I'm going to start my own business again. In the past, I had many businesses, and at that time as well, I had just finished my MBA.
That's not bad for someone who's an idiot, right?
Right. So like I've always had this high ambition, but I just felt like there was just this handbrake. And then I went into the business, and it was the first week that my son had colic. It was the same week that we had our son. He had colic, and we didn't even know what that meant. He couldn't sleep, which meant that I couldn't sleep, the wife couldn't sleep. So I was going into work always on the back foot, sleep deprived. I had every business coach under the sun. I had all the marketing. Everything was great. But for whatever reason, the business wasn't doing too well. It was just spiraling out of control. Couldn't pay rent, couldn't pay staff, wages. And one day, Alex found me curled up into a ball, really anxious. And I'm like, I'm fucked, right? Like, I'm going to lose the business. I'm back to where our parents were when they first came here. They sacrificed so much, and here I am shoving it in their faces. And I felt so sorry for myself one day, and I was asking the universe for a plan or for some signs. I was in my jocks, and I ended up watching Tony Robbins, I'm Not Your Guru. And something fascinating, I was watching it, and something was really resonating with me. He was creating change in such little time. And I'm like, I need this. I identified that there is something else that was at play. I couldn't really understand, but I really wanted to do what he did. And so I Googled what Tony Robbins studied. And, it came up as NLP, neuro-linguistic programming. So then I Googled the best schools in Australia for neuro-linguistic programming. And then that was the start of my journey. And then 2 weeks into doing that course was like a group introduction. My business started to increase. And I'm like, what the hell is that? Like, I've just paid $100,000 on my MBA and nothing, right? And I've done this 2-week course, and it really helped my business perform better. And I'm like, I need to know more about this. And what I learned was that I was the problem. And the problem that I couldn't delegate properly. I had massive anxiety, massive depression, limiting beliefs. All these types of things were holding me and my performance back. And that was the start of my journey of uncovering mind performance.
It resonates with me a lot, just obviously slightly different, but even from other people I talk to. And that's the whole reason why we created this podcast. And that's why we call it Roots to Results, because I feel like regardless of what it is as an individual, like a lot of these stories are very similar in the sense of we're starting from that root basically. And for a lot of us, we're not allowing ourselves to grow, but the ones who do grow, that's where they naturally do get results. The more you talk to people, obviously you talk to high performers. In my background, I used to train a lot of athletes, right? But then I stepped away from it because I actually didn't really enjoy it. And I actually got a lot more satisfaction out of helping, let's just call it for a better word, but like Joe Soaps, right? Just everyday people who had everyday struggles, allowing them to do amazing things. And obviously that was in the fitness space. So that was more around them and their movement capacity, right? And this is, I guess, how we've kind of intertwined now, right? More from physical and mindset and how that physical and mental aspect, when we have both of those kind of in tune, we can kind of perform at our best, right? But it's very interesting because a lot of people will always, in my experience, will give up too soon. It will, life is always going to be challenging, right? Even where you're at now, you have challenges, and the ratio of what that is probably the same as what it was years ago. The only difference is there's more at stake, or there's different things at stake, right? And so there's never this perfect scenario where we're ever going to get to where we're just sitting on top of the hill on a bench, nice and relaxed. I feel like there's always going to be challenges, and there's always going to be tribulations, right? Now, obviously someone like myself, I have similar struggles like you, where, anxiety, that sort of stuff. And when you take big risks in life, then that's what comes along with it, right? And the people that you now work with, I would imagine that they go through a lot of that, and probably on a larger scale that maybe we don't even fathom, right? Because of pressures of, I think when I played football, the biggest crowd attendance that I ever walked out in front of was probably about 8,000. But like I would imagine, some of the people that you're working with, they've got 80,000, 100,000 people, and, you got to perform. And there's obviously CEOs in the business and their performance is slightly different. But if you're going out every week, week in, week out, and you do have thousands of people watching you, that can definitely play a massive part in your mindset, right? But I guess what that leads me into is, you talk a lot about kind of decoding behavioral patterns, but how does someone even begin to recognize the invisible patterns holding them back?
Well, first they have to recognize there is something holding them back. So just a very simple way of doing it is like what you say you want versus what you're actually doing. If it's totally different, then there is some type of from the outside it looks like self-sabotage behavior, right? But it's not self-sabotage. It's like on the inside, it's survival. It's what comfort is. It's what familiarity is. And then it's about understanding, okay, well, this belief that I have around this thing, like that's not allowing me to get there, how is this familiar? Like, what does this belief or this feeling that's holding me back remind me of growing up? And that's just a very simple way of decoding what's real and what's not. So for those people who have watched, what's that movie with Leonardo DiCaprio where he's in the dream? Inception, right? They go into the dream within a dream, and the only way of them knowing whether it's something is real or not real is they've got this little like spinner, right? And if it spins and it falls, they know that they're not in a dream, and everything else they know that it's real. But if the spin spins and keeps on going, they know that it's not real. And that's what I do. So whenever I have a belief, right, I always stop and catch myself and say, is this real? And the way that I do it is like, is this belief a belief or is it fact? And I always compare it to like gravity, right? So is this belief like, gravity? And it's 99% of the time, it's not. So then I challenge it. I'm like, where did this belief come from? And I investigate. And I quickly see that, hang on, this is a belief that I was told and passed on from my parents, passed on from, the people that I was hanging around with. And that's pretty much how I've obviously doing the like using the modalities of, like NLP and hypnosis as well. But this is just something you guys can do without any of that kind of thing.
Yeah, I relate that to my upbringing is coming from a very working class area of Dublin in Ireland. And when I came to Australia, first off, I was living in a more affluent area. And the difference that I experienced was I have always had very high expectations of myself. When I played sports, I would always train harder, I would eat healthier, I would sleep earlier. I would do everything in my part to ensure that when I stepped out on a field, if somebody was better than me, it had to be just down to genetics or skill, something that I just couldn't control, right? But I always had aspirations to, when I was 12 years of age, I used to cook local gardens, right? I always had a way of trying to make money. It was just always in my mind, right? And I think some of it stems to, my mom had two jobs. She was a single mom with four kids, mid 30s with an 18-year-old. So it was like she used to work two jobs just to make sure that we always had whatever it is that we needed, right? So my mindset was always, well, if you work harder, then, everything's going to be okay. So that's what I took out into any sport and anything that I've ever done, right? The flip side of it is when you are in a working class area, it's very hard to get out of a working class area because of the mindset, which is they always look at the negative side. Not always, but in my experience, right? So, for example, I want to start a business. Oh, how much is that going to cost? What if it fails? Are you sure about that? Then I talk to, when I came to Australia and I'm talking to, say, people a bit more affluent, and this isn't in Ireland versus Australia. Like, this is just my experience on living in two different areas. There is areas in Ireland that are very affluent also, right? But being in this affluent area, I was having breakfast with a few folks who are quite well off. And the minute that I mentioned about a business, they were like, oh, what is it that you need help with? Could I help you with you? Maybe I know a guy who could help with that part. And then it started to flip my mindset of like, whoa, there is possibilities. And I think that kind of relates to what you were saying, is that, we have to look back at our upbringing and potential things that have been said to us that now maybe as an adult, or, in our later years, we can actually look back and say, okay, so that's what was ingrained in the system. And this is a really good kind of analogy. When I was working in the fitness space, I used to train kids and I used to train adults. And what I used to say to the adults is, training kids is like training somebody with a clean chalkboard, because every input that I give in there, there's no pre-existing thought of that. Whereas when I am trying to teach an adult, the chalkboard's been rubbed out a few times. So you might still be able to see a little bit of information in behind there, but I'm going to try and write over that. And then I'm going to try and clean it even more and then write over it again. So eventually all you can see is that bit of information, right?
That's exactly right.
And I think,
Yeah.
because I love what you're about, right? I feel like, I know you work specifically with CEOs and high performers, but even anybody listening to this, like, it's so powerful for you to even look back at the last 90 days. We're always looking forward in the sense of, if I could just have that, if I could just do that, if I just lost this amount of weight, if I had this amount of money. But if we actually look at the last 90 days and appraise kind of what have we done, and we look at the positives, we say to ourselves, all right, what did I do the last 90 days? Cool. Now can I do more the next 90 days? And I appreciate what that level of growth is over the next 90 days. And then I reassess in 90 days and look back, right? And I think that's very powerful, because the slow and steady progress, and I always talk about consistency trumps intensity. It's like, it's more powerful than anybody can imagine. And it's something that people don't appreciate, because they always look like, if someone looks at me and then they judge where I'm at now, they don't appreciate the 10 years that was put in before getting to this point, and then they get disheartened because they're looking at the now, not the 10 years. And I always say this, like, hey, Karim, I'm just 10 years ahead of you. Like, it's like, it's nothing against you. It's just, hey, let's just get to work and keep assessing and keep being okay with where you're going, right? That kind of leads me on to the next thing. Like, do you believe peak performance is more about mindset mastery, or do you think it's about like system mastery, or both?
It's obviously both. So I like to tell people that your mind is broken up into two segments, right? You've got your conscious mind, which is the things that you're aware of. Like, I need to wake up and train, to do the process. I need to wake up and remember to do this. And I want to become faster. That's conscious mind. That's logical, right? That's only 5% of what your total mind is. The other 95% that sits beneath the surface is your subconscious. This is where everything is. So your memories, your beliefs, everything that you've experienced in the past, all sits in your subconscious. So you cannot outrun your subconscious. That's why it's so important. So yes, all the systems and processes are very important, but the things that all the things that carry for you to get there is much bigger. All this subconscious. And that's why it's really important for you to see what the things that are holding you back. As an example, recently I'm doing a lot of athletes, right? I'm not sure why, right? Obviously I know why, but I'm just attracting more athletes now. And what and what they're learning is that whether they're going sprinting, they're not realizing how much self-chatter is in their mind. Like, they're talking, like what they're saying to themselves, that's actually weighing them down and actually causing them to be slower and then stopping them. All these things are taking up energy in their body as well. Like, this is a lot of resources, right? That's just playing. And then after the session, when we remove all that self-chatter and that negative doubt, they can run faster and they feel like they're a lot more free. So that's not processes, right? So, but they're able to do the processes a lot faster and better afterwards. And that's sort of my take on things, is that let's deal with the lowest hanging fruit, right? Let's deal with the 95% first. Then we can do like the 1%ers.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I look at it and I relate it to Usain Bolt, right? And, he was a great performer, not just in the actual sprinting, but when he came out, he was always so relaxed. And you saw him, he'd fist bump the person holding the water, or, the steward at the blocks, he'd high five them, and he just completely calm, and it's like, then you'd see someone beside him and they're so uptight and they're so nervous. And it's like, okay, he's, on top of his game, but that other person is probably like 0.01 of a second slower than him, in the sense of like, that's the difference. So for the other person, having an ability to kind of, like, as you say there, like, clear the mind and be a little bit more like him and a bit more relaxed, that could be why you actually shift that extra 0.01 second, because your genetics and your training, you would hope at that point, is wherever it's not going to get better than that, right? You've done your tapering, you're coming in at the peak of your physical capacity. So what was the difference? And that's a testament there, right? It could be just that he came out and he was just relaxed, just high fiving on the biggest stage, 100,000 people watching him, and he's just fist bumping and just, having a little dance before stepping on the blocks. And it's so powerful, right? I used to see it with, so I played Gaelic football, which is an Irish sport, and very like Australian rules for anybody here in Australia listening. And I used to have people on my team who used to literally go into the toilet and puke before a game. Like, we've done our warm up, we've come back in, we've now put our jerseys on, we're just about to go out, and they would walk in because they had that level of anxiety before stepping out onto a pitch. Like, it's insane, right? And, there's nothing, or maybe, I mean, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but like in their instance, they were like, well, I don't know what to do to change that, right? Like, that's just, I've always done it. And they'd still go out and perform. And, maybe this is where it's really interesting, right? Because now as an adult, and I look back and I go, well, with the power of what you're saying, that could have meant that you could have improved your performance, because you weren't wasting all that energy on being anxious and then actually getting to a level of anxiety that your body has gone into fight and flight mode and decided it needs to throw up. Like, all that energy could have been kept for actually being out on the pitch and, competing for the ball. So this is what, again, I'll keep reiterating, this is why I love, obviously, since we've connected, like, understanding what you do. And because I see it as being so powerful. And in my own scenario of playing a sport, I wish I had access to this sort of stuff when we were younger, right? Because I always had a lot of injuries, right? That's why I then moved into being a mobility coach. It wasn't because I was this naturally gifted Cirque du Soleil flexible kind of contortionist, right? It was quite the opposite. It was that, why do I always keep getting injured? But yet, why do I have the right mindset to actually just do the thing to train and get back? With some of the injuries that I've had, it's a 6-month rehab. And so what allowed me from the mindset perspective, because it's shitty, trust me. Like, I've had 5 injuries that I've had 6-month rehabs. So when you take that into a sport that, let's say you go and play adult sport at 18, and on average, most people play to maybe 30, 32. And you see there that 3 years of that was injuries, like, of me, like, literally trying to get back. So from a mindset perspective, from a growth perspective, and all of the things that were outside of my control at that time, now is in the space and the realm of intelligence that I see is out there now. It's crazy to see that from a different approach. Maybe I could have saved 2 years off that.
Mm.
And thankfully, mine wasn't a professional sport, but when I was training, professional athletes here in Australia, that's one of the big things that we would say to them. This could add 2 years to your career. So in what you do, for sure, like, you have somebody, I'll give you an example. So Tom Trbojevic is a NRL footballer here in Australia, and, probably one of the best NRL footballers when fit. And he's just had the last few years of just nasty injuries. So much so, the particular team that he plays for have flown him out to America. They've gone to American football teams and used their rehab, still getting injured. Maybe, potentially, him going to something more from a mental perspective could open his horizon to something that they don't see, right? And a lot of beliefs or a lot of things that are in his body. And that's where I think the world is starting to open up to this a lot more because there's no denying that it is very powerful. I mean, you obviously can attest to this. You work with very high performers and, you're getting amazing results with them. And I guess what I'd like, to push on from there is just kind of around, how do I say this? How do you personally manage your own mental load and energy? And what are your non-negotiables? Because obviously working with these people, you're naturally going to take a lot of their energy as well, right?
So when I first started this journey, I became a, a trauma coach. I came when I first started finishing. I'm like, oh my gosh, I can help people with trauma, with PTSD, anxiety. I could like really help these people that really need it the most. And I was really ignorant at the time, so I went out there and I'm like, oh my gosh, I came, like I felt like a superhero. So I'm like, you need help, you need help. I can help everyone. I'm like a superhero. I've got this really cool tool that I can help people with in such little time. And people were looking at me like, dude, what are you on? Like, what's wrong with you? I'm like, what do you mean, what's wrong with me? I want to help people. And most of them were just like, fuck off. And I'm like, what do you mean? I'm like, don't pay me. I'll do it for free. Right. And I remember doing this. I remember when I was first promoting myself, I was like, hey guys, I've learned this really cool tool. I've been getting some really cool results, and I put it out on my social years ago. And I said, if you know anyone or if you have any PTSD or anxiety, let me help you and I'll do it for free. Right? All I need is just a testimonial. And I had so many people inbox me, so many people, right? Inboxing me, telling me about the thing that they experienced. And they were sort of telling it like they were wearing it like a badge of honor. And the thing is that I said at the start is that I'm only picking one person. So they were all motivated to tell me about their story, right? And they were like, this is my story, blah, blah, blah. I'm different. I've had it the worst. But little did they know that I was going to help everyone. I'm not the type of guy just to turn people away, right? If they've got a thing that I can help with, I'm always going to help them, regardless of whether they pay me or not. And so I'll be like, okay, well, you know what? You've been chosen, right? Let me know a date that I can, that we can catch up. 0 ghost. And so what I learned is that people are comfortable in that space. They may tell you how much they're suffering and how much they want change. But when it comes down to it, most of them don't really want change. That's why they're in that position for such a long time. People who really want change will find it like they need to find food, right? Like if they haven't eaten in like 2 weeks. But if someone who's constantly complaining and, I often find that they're creating this themselves. And so back to your question is that what I've learned is that not to take people's shit on, because I know, right? And even from the work that I do, is that if they're comfortable, then I should be comfortable too. They've chosen, I know this sounds cruel and I know this sounds really bad, right? And non empathetic. But I'm a big believer of that, like, we are putting ourselves into these situations. We are contributing in some kind of way of how we're getting here. And if they're not playing ball, if they're not, getting the results that they need, it's not my job to take on their problems because that exhausts me. And they don't really want change in the first place. Obviously, considering, that they're not getting the results. And that's what I've learned. I've learned to be comfortable if they're comfortable and they're happy. And that's a big part of the sessions is that I don't take other people's shit on because it's not mine to take.
Yeah, I can relate a little bit in the sense of when I used to train people, I used to get really affected when these are people who've, completely opened up to you. I'm struggling with this. I've had this pain for so long. Life is so like hard now and it's, I hate myself, blah, blah, blah. You assess them, you give them the solution, you be very realistic in how long that solution is going to be and what it's going to take. And then 2 or 3 sessions in, they just ghost you. And then I used to get really offended because I used to be like, well, what did I do wrong? But then what it actually made me realize, you didn't do anything wrong. They didn't want the help. Like, they realized what was involved and they chose the easier option. And I always say to people, is like, I can make things simple for you. Simple doesn't mean easy. Simple is I can simplify everything that I do. I'm very logical like that. If it's training, if it's building systems, if it's approach to fatherhood, so I can make it very simple. But simple doesn't mean easy. You have to make sacrifices, and that's not the easy parts, you know? And I think everybody wants the result, but they don't want to take the journey. And I always say this to people is like, I'm a shepherd. I can guide you. Well, you have to take a step yourself. Like, I'm not here to hold your hand and babysit you. And yeah, like you said earlier, some people don't like to be spoken like that. But this is where the beauty of, I guess, social media and somebody understanding who you are is that they kind of know. Like, you see me on social media, I'm the same person when you meet me. So what that means is if you don't like the way I am on social media, then you're probably not going to want to work with me. And the flip side of that
Mm,
is if you do like it and you know that I'm a no bullshitter and I tell you how it is, then that's probably the way I'm going to approach when I'm helping you. And I think that's powerful in itself because I have enough, and same with yourself, right? Like, I've got enough testimonials to show that if you let me guide you, then I can send you on the right path. And here's X, Y, and Z who was in the same situation as you, who is no longer in that situation. I think just to pull back on kind of what you said there around, like, you can sabotage yourself by the way you talk to yourself as well, right? Like, a few months ago, I always train. I enjoy training. It's good for my head. And I think I said this to you off camera a few weeks ago. It's like I had to look at myself in what was happening to me a few months ago. And what was happening to me was I was trying to put everybody else in front of me. I was trying to help everybody else, on my platform, building systems for people, just, you know, always looking to help other people. And then I realized is that I was only training here and there and there was no structure behind it. And I say let myself go, but like to the standard that I like to keep my fitness, I was letting myself go. And then I actually had to pull myself back, which a lot of people don't do. And I had to be really honest to myself. And I was like, mate, you're not doing what you're saying you're doing. So it's time to do the thing that you preach about. And it was hard. Like, I joined a gym and I was getting up at 4 a.m., still am, to go to a gym. Do I like doing that? Now, I guess I like it a little bit easier. But at the start, I had set an alarm clock and I did not like getting up to. But then there was a bigger thing at play, right? Like, this is about me being healthy and being at my best because when I perform at my best, everything else becomes simpler. Like, my business has become simpler because I'm more motivated to get in there and do the work. I'm being a more present father because when you're fitter and healthier, guess what? Yeah, let's go to the beach. Let's go for a swim. Like, let's go and throw a ball. Let's go for a cycle. And you know, it's the small, steady increments. I didn't say to myself, I'm going to do this 6-week challenge and I'm going to no, I just said, I'm going to start from today. There's no end date on this. And so, whatever it is now, 16 weeks on, I'm like, great. I'm back to really enjoying training. This morning I cycled my daughter to her kindergarten and it was a 12K round trip. Could I have driven? Yeah. Did I? No. So we make, I honestly think, and I think you said it earlier, is that we make better choices when we're in a better frame of mind. And so you kind of said it in the sense of like, how do I say this? This is a good way of saying it. Luck is when preparation meets opportunity, right? So it's
mm,
like when you're prepared, and that can be physically, mentally, then you will naturally see that better things happen to you. If you
yeah.
talk in a better frame of mind, have you ever, I mean, this what love is like, have you ever been around people and they're just always negative? Then what happens is you nearly notice yourself being a little bit negative. And sometimes you have to pull yourself back out of that. And that can be hard at times because it could be somebody who you're very close to. And then you
Mm,
realize that they're outlaying that because they're probably not happy within themselves. That's usually what happens. This is what I say to my daughter. I say, nobody who's truly happy will be mean to somebody else. So I say to her, when someone's mean to you, there's usually something going on with them. Like, they're probably not
yeah.
okay. And you need to ask them, are they okay? And from an adult perspective, I can see that. I think it was Ed Sheeran said, whenever he sees somebody post a selfie on Instagram, he wonders if they're okay.
Yes.
it's crazy, isn't it? Because I think back to 12 years ago when I went through I broke up with somebody who I thought I was going to spend the rest of my life with. And I was in Western Australia by myself, and it was horrendous. I didn't know who to talk to. I didn't know what to do. And it was, it's something now that I use in a weird way as like, well, that was the lowest. So anything shitty that happens now, it was never as bad as that, you know? And I use that as my own kind of self motivation. So when I think of like, oh, life's hard, then I go, yeah, but remember sitting on that beach that morning and questioning everything? That was hard. And you got through that and you woke up the next day. And that's kind of something that I think is very powerful for people, right? It's like, yeah, life is shitty. We all have problems. But the more that I work in this realm, and I'm sure you can attest to this, the more you realize there's people with a lot more problems than you, and they do a lot more than you to try and address them, and they keep getting pushed back and they keep going forward. What we escalate as being our tough times, that is a holiday for people.
Mm.
Now, I still acknowledge that problems are problems. And I relate this to a story I heard about. There was like a kid in a school, and her biggest problem was that they weren't going skiing. Mom and dad weren't bringing us skiing. Worst parents ever. And there was another kid in the school, and she was from a domestic violence family and all the things like. And she was just happy she got to come to school with her new red pencil or something it was. And it's like, but we have to appreciate that things are at different ratios, right? So the problems that we face, they change, right? Like if I'm a kid, and I appreciate this with my kids, they say like, I can't find my Gabby doll. And to them, that is the most like, it's outrageous. I can't find it. Like my day is ruined. It's because that's the most important possession that they have right now, and they can't find it. If you couldn't find your phone, you wouldn't leave the house. You'd spend hours looking for it, right?
Right.
So we have to appreciate, like, as much as, I guess I'm saying this because I want to acknowledge people listening that your problems are validated. But that's not to say that you shouldn't try to even improve even 1% from that point, right? Because 1% today means 2% in 2 days. We can constantly improve and just chisel away at it. It's the idea of like small and steady steps keep you going forward, right? I think
Absolutely.
on the basis of that, I think I'd like to kind of understand, is there something, like if you could teach one universal kind of mental skill to everyone on the planet, what would it be?
That what you see in others. So just say like there is someone that you really look up to, like whether you're in the athlete space or you're in the corporate space, and if you're in the corporate space, you're really looking up to this like this big person who's really successful, right? Whether it's in any space. I want you just to stop and do a couple of things. And I've used this for so many years, and it's helped me achieve such of my, like a lot of my successes. And I teach this to people, like if I'm just, talking to a parent at a birthday party, and I'll be having a conversation and I'll be teaching them this thing. So for me, as an example, one of my biggest idols was like Tony Robbins. Still is, like he's the OG, right? And this was taught to me. So whatever I'm seeing in him, like whatever I'm seeing in him is usually a reflection of me. And what that does is, like, just say I'm helping, like one of the questions is like, what do you see in someone that you're elevating? They're like, oh, he's helping so many people in such little time. He's, so motivating, he's inspirational. And I'm like, okay, what are the parts of that in me that I own? And what that does is it allows me to then not elevate him and put him on a pedestal. Because when you elevate and put people on a pedestal, you're minimizing yourself at the same time. You can't perform from a place of minimization. And so it's a really quick way of saying, okay, well, I want what that person has, but I can't have it because I'm putting him above, but I'm also putting myself below. And so I just use that really quick way of saying, what qualities and traits do I have in myself that I own? And that allows me to see myself at a different perspective. that I can do and I can get this thing, all it comes down to is just a belief. Like, what's the only thing that's stopping me from doing what Tony does is a belief. He started from nothing. I probably had more, right? So if anything, I'm way ahead of him. And it's just this understanding where your mind is at. Because this is, your mind plays a lot of tricks on you. But that's something really, really cool that I like teaching people.
Yeah, I think that's super powerful because when we look at, for example, the founders of Canva, and they created something that was kind of already out there. You know, like we have Adobe, we have other softwares that edit images, and everybody said she was crazy. It's never going to work, and it's already a saturated market. Now, at that point, she could have said, okay, like it was a good idea. Not going to go ahead with it. But no, she was quite the opposite. She was like, no, it is going to work. And it's going to work exactly the way my brain has envisaged it. And now it's $1 billion company, you know, and it's going to outweigh everyone. I think more people use Canva now than Adobe, or if not, they're very close to it. Like, and it's insane, right? And that's purely down to belief and then obviously good steps as well. And this is where luck obviously comes in the sense of opportunity meets preparation. And yeah, I love stories like that. Like, I love when you hear somebody who just kept getting knocked down and was just like, nah, no, you're not stopping me. Like, you can make me have to divert a little bit, but I'm going forward. Like, you are not stopping me. And I love the story. Canva's obviously one of the big examples just because of what she created and actually came in right at the right time of AI. And, you know, now they've excelled and just, yeah, it's a great story. Right?
Yeah. Most of today's billionaires have a story. And the reason why they've got a story, like the reason why that they're billionaires is because they're resilient. The reason why they're resilient is because they've had a story. And so whenever I speak to people, you know, who have come from, you know, adversity in their past, I always remind them that they have an unfair advantage because you can't buy that. It's just now using that as leverage for your success. Like, people that I went to school with, they look at me now and they're like, dude, how the fuck? Like, because I was really fat as well, right? I was massive. I was like George Costanza, right? With the stutter. I was like worse, right? And so people are looking at me like, dude, how have you now done a TEDx? How have you done your MBA? How are you coaching NFL players? How are you coaching, you know, one of the most successful, you know, CEOs and entrepreneurs in Australia? It's like, how? Just like what you said, right? It's like usually the craziest people with the craziest beliefs are the ones that get there. And yeah, so I've just told myself, hey, how do I be really crazy? How do I believe, like, and act like a crazy person to make myself believe that I can actually just go do it?
Yeah, I think my experience is that a lot of people make mistakes because they try to change things. But actually, some of the best self-help books are hundreds of years old. Some of the best business books are hundreds of years old. And actually, if we were to copy, like I always say this in investing, like if you were to copy the best investors for the last 50 years, you would be a millionaire now. But a lot of people tried to say, oh, well, I'm going to do things differently. Now, don't get me wrong, sometimes it works for people. But in reality, if you want to be a certain thing, find the person who's already at that thing. And like what you said about Tony Robbins, what do they do really, really well? And what traits do I have that are similar to that? What systems do they use? What structure do they use? How did they go about it? Study it. Because the thing is, you will never be Tony Robbins because you don't sound like him. You're not the same height as him. You don't look like him. You're never going to be the same as him. But you don't want to be the same as him because you're Karim. And that's what I think is powerful for people is that, and that's the mindset that I've taken. Like when I started posting on social media, people just thought I was crazy. He's like, oh, he's always he's always posting on social media. But I just had a bigger goal. I always said I wanted to be online. I said, you know, myself and Amy, we first met in 2017 and we sat down and we spoke about it. I set up a YouTube channel and then it was very much around, I'm going to post this because this is what's going to happen. I'm going to be more of a stay-at-home dad when we have our first kid. You're going to work and I'm going to grow this and then it's going to flip. And 9 days ago, she stepped away from corporate and now it's flipping. And it's like, that didn't happen by chance. That was something that we set out. We didn't put a timeline on it, but we always said that this is the way it's going to be. I posted on social media for 4.5 years without any kind of gratification. And then boom, it popped off and changed our world. So that was 4.5 years of an overnight success, as I say to people. But it was because I didn't do it for success. I did it because I really enjoyed it. I did it because I got to help people. And the byproduct of that is that people started to resonate with what I was telling them. And I think that's the powerful side of it, right? Most people, they want the result, but they don't want to appreciate the journey. I think we could talk for hours, but I think what I'd like to kind of finish it up on is, for someone listening who feels stuck in kind of cycles, what's one simple, actionable step that they can take today to start shifting momentum?
Sure. So this is the one thing that really helped me when I was feeling stuck, way back when I was curled up into a ball, I felt like the world was going to fall apart and collapse. The first thing that I had to do was just surrender, just let go. Don't have any attachment to the outcome. It is going to be whatever it's going to be. It's going to happen regardless of how I feel. Right? That's just the first thing. The second thing is to ask yourself, how did I create this? And what does this moment remind me of in my childhood? And what that does is it puts you in a state of clarity, because then it puts you in a state of control, away from victimhood into control. You're able to make movement when you're in control. Like, this possibly doesn't have a lot to do with now. Like, people think that if they're going through a really hard time in their life and they're feeling stuck, that they think that it's a now problem. 9 times out of 10, it's a problem that had evolved for many, many years. Like, it's a pattern that they're not seeing, that they just keep going over and over. And they expect just to keep pushing harder and harder and forget to get different outcomes. And that's the problem right there, right? And there's this saying that I've always loved, that change means you change. And just using those little few principles could mean, some really big clarity for you.
Awesome. I think that would be a good one to finish up on. I just want to let people know that obviously we have just recently connected, but next month we're going to be diving together on a nice little retreat just around a few things. Do you want to just touch on that in relation to what it is? And I can obviously put the details in the description of every platform that we put this out in.
So we're taking high performers, we're taking about 10 high performers to Noosa for 2 days for a retreat. And what we're going to do is we're going to elevate and rewire their mind quickly to allow them to see more opportunity through the chaos that we're in. Like, as we're feeling at the moment, the world feels like it's in chaos, right? AI is around the corner. People are feeling like, they need to jump on AI, because if they don't, they're going to miss the boat and all that kind of thing. AI is important, but the bigger piece is us. Who's controlling AI? Who's going to see the opportunities? AI is just an extension. It's just another extension of us. And so I'm going to take these high performers to the next level. They're already successful, but they just can't break through that glass ceiling, and they can't see what it is that's holding them back. We're going to be using principles that Tony Robbins uses, as well as really deep hypnosis, to help create that change faster. Yeah, would love to see you there if you're interested.
Awesome. I'll put the details in the description. I'm looking forward to it. My fiance Amy is looking forward to it. And I think it's going to be an awesome few days of some really kind of awesome changes. Thanks for making the time to come today. It's been good to connect. I know we connect a bit offline, but I think what you do is powerful, and I wanted my listeners to obviously hear it. So yeah, thanks for coming, man.
Cool.